So today we're going to learn about wetlands, what they are, what are the different types of wetlands, and why we should want to protect them, why they're good. Okay, so a wetland is defined as any land area that is covered with a shallow layer of water during some or all of the year. So there can be times where wetlands will evaporate out and dry out, but for most of them, they're going to be covered in at least a slightly, a thin, shallow layer of water permanently throughout time. And the reason for that is the fact that a lot of these estuaries are below sea level. So when water comes in, it doesn't naturally flow out and it just stays there, creating this very special and unique ecosystem. Okay, so let's talk about some different types of wetlands. So freshwater wetlands, so these are ones obviously with fresh water, not salty at all. You're going to find them in locations that are more inland, far away from coast regions, as well as where rivers and along river systems, especially the larger ones. The three main ones that you're more likely to see are marshes, which is this one here. You have tall grasses there. Whenever you see tall grasses, you know it's a marsh. That is characteristic of all marshes. Also, swamps. So swamps are considered like flooded forests. They tend to be in locations that are warmer and more humid in their climates. Louisiana is a perfect example. But just know that some swamps can also be saltwater too. So the Everglades is a great example of that. Because it is along the coastline of Florida, it is going to have salty water. So swamps can be fresh or salt. Bogs is this final picture over here. You're going to find a bog in cooler climates. Think more of like up north, North Dakota, parts of Canada, where you have these grooves left behind from glaciers that carved out these chunks in the ground, and then water got into them and essentially makes it a wetland. But these bogs look very different from the others. Instead of tall trees and all this lush grass, you instead have like moss covering over the land. All right, there's also saltwater wetlands. You're obviously going to find these near coastal regions. And also, there can be wetlands, which are called estuaries, where rivers empty into oceans at their mouth, right? Where the water is a mixture of salt water and fresh water. So it's slightly salty. It gives a very unique blend of water that the ecosystem there, the wildlife that lives there, some of them really can't live anywhere else because they're used to that salt level. Some are a little more hardy and can go any which way, but there's quite a lot of wildlife that you would really only find in that slightly salty condition. But the two here that I'm going to talk about are pretty much all just salt water. So these are the salt marshes. As I told you, they're just marshes. They have tall grasses. If you saw a picture of a saltwater marsh and a freshwater marsh, you would have a hard time knowing which is which is fine. And then mangrove forests are these really cool trees with these tangled root systems that attach to the bottom of the mangrove forests, like beneath on the wetland floor. And these tangled roots come up out of the water, and then you see the trunk of the tree. So very unique, but very cool. All right, so now we're going to talk about what makes them important. And we're going to break this down into plants and animals. So first, let's talk about plants. You're going to find so much diversity and lush plant life in a wetland. And there's mainly two reasons. One, because they're sheltered. Because they're in this punch bowl, you don't have flowing water going in and out. fast flowing. It's very slow, so it's gentle. So you can easily get more fragile plant life that wouldn't be able to handle a faster flowing source of water. So you get beautiful, lush plants, as well as very nutrient soil because that water is not refreshed all the time. All those minerals and such from prior plant life just go back down to the soil, add to it, make it even more nutrient. And because there's so much plant life, that then creates a ton of diversity in wildlife for animals. Because whenever you have a lot of rich diversity in plant life, that's going to create more abundance of insects and fish that rely on that plant life. And that will bring in larger predatory animals, such as like crocodiles, that come to the wetlands to feed. So you have this huge diversity of wildlife, as well as migratory animals, particularly birds, rely heavily on wetlands. Many of them, it's instinctual in them that whenever it gets cold and they head south for the winter, they go to a particular wetland to get their source of food, to get that protection. There's not a lot of people that live near wetlands, and so they have that very safe zone. And some of them will just stay there for all winter. Some stop to feed and then continue on their way, but some will just stay there the entire winter. Okay, so last we're going to talk about why they're helpful and important for people. Why we should care and try to protect them. Okay, so in the 70s, we passed laws that protected the wetlands because where they're located, they're in beautiful scenic places where hotels would love to put their resorts there because look at this beautiful ocean and you have, these pretty wetlands. Well, that would decimate and destroy the wetlands. So in the 70s, they passed a law that says you can't build anything like that near or on a wetland. So this is why. One, they act as a natural filter to the oceans. They filter out, like imagine the marshes, the tall grasses. Any pollution that we put on our land that is naturally going to want to wash out to sea will get caught and stuck in the wetlands. So it is a barrier for that stuff that ends up in the ocean, which is still bad. We don't want to pollute the wetlands either. We should stop polluting, but there's a lot of us, and that's probably not going to happen. So that's one benefit to the wetlands. Another is that it reduces flooding. It stabilizes the ground. It reduces flooding and erosion by having the root systems stuck in place, the roots needing that water, so it draws up that water, so it reduces the flooding, and it stabilizes the ground. So it's really good, again, at stabilizing the land. And last, it's great for agriculture. The wetlands have a controlled temperature. Water is great at controlling climate. If you've been to coastal regions, they tend to have the same temperature, roughly, give or take maybe 20 degrees throughout the whole year. Water is great at doing that. So wetlands are going to be a much more controlled, where you're not having these big high and low temperature drops, as well as a reliable source of water. All agriculture needs water. And the ones that we particularly grow on wetlands the most are cranberries, which is this picture up here. They float on the water. And then rice. Rice fields are almost always in natural wetlands, as well as manufactured ones that people have created in their companies. So, all right. So that is it. That is why wetlands are important. We should be protecting them and trying to do everything we can to stop their decrease. Okay, that's it.